All right. Hello, everyone. I know we still have folks trickling in, but I would love to get started. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We are going to be starting with a brief introduction of all of the artists that will be participating today, and then we will hop into a roundtable discussion. So just to kick things off, my name is Erin Jane Nelson, and I am the director of Burnaway. Burnaway is an Atlanta-based artist-run organization with 3 core programs: a magazine of contemporary art and criticism, career training for aspiring arts writers and cultural journalists, and advocacy for artists and writers working in the Southern United States. I encourage you to check out our website at burnaway.org and subscribe to our weekly newsletter to receive reviews, artist profiles, news, and digital artist projects in your inbox each week. This program is brought to you in partnership with South Arts. South Arts is a regional arts organization serving artists, organizations, and communities across the Southern United States. South Arts programming includes grant making that helps arts and artists move across state borders and reach into underserved communities. The Southern Prize and State Fellowships, launched by South Arts in 2017, support and acknowledge the highest quality of artists creating their work in the South. Each year, South Arts holds an open call for visual artists to apply for $80,000 in cash awards. Applicants are adjudicated by a panel of jurors who select the 9 winning artists, 1 per state, to each receive a $5,000 state fellowship award. Those 9 artists are then adjudicated by another panel of jurors who select 2 to receive additional awards: a Southern Prize finalist receiving an additional $10,000 and a Southern Prize winner receiving an additional $25,000, plus a 2-week residency at the Hambidge Center for Creative Arts and Sciences. In addition to the cash awards, the 9 artists are featured in an exhibition to showcase their work for the public. And this year we are doing these group conversations to, help connect you with these amazing artists during these times of social distancing. So thank you so much for joining me today. I welcome everyone in attendance to throw questions in the chat, and we'll be answering audience questions at the end of today's program. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it off. There we go. So today we will be hearing from Karen Ocker, Fahamu Pecou, Kristi, Ryba, and Bill Steber. Our first panelist is Kristi Ryba, who combines the elaborate skill of handmade temperate painting with subjects that explore contemporary events and messages of morality. Over the last several years, Ryba's interest in the study of medieval and Renaissance art has informed her current work. She uses images from centuries ago, which serve as a vehicle to provide the symbolic and instructional imagery to illustrate the leadership crisis we are in presently. All the gold, elaborate surroundings and messages of morality and ethics are a comment on what she sees as happening in our government: the gutting of our social safety net and healthcare, the elimination of environmental protections, the lack of restraint in spending money on personal enrichment, and the buildup of military spending, to name a few. Kristi holds an MFA from Vermont College, Montpelier, Vermont, and most recently won 2nd place in the esteemed annual visual arts competition, Art Fields. Ryba is represented by Corrigan Gallery in Charleston, South Carolina, and is in numerous private collections, including the Medical University of South Carolina. Please join me in welcoming Kristi. Kristi, if you want to wave hi and let everyone know who you are. Great. Our next panelist is Karen Ocker. Karen is an award-winning New Orleans-based artist. Her work has been included in exhibits at the Ogden Museum of Southern Arts, New Orleans Museum of Art, New Orleans Contemporary Art Center, Cano, McKenna Museum of African American Art, and AIR Gallery in New York. Ocker's medium of oil painting is directly influenced by her grandmother, who introduced her to painting as a small child. The floods that followed Hurricane Katrina were the pivotal moment that changed her trajectory as an artist. Ocker abandoned working as a graphic designer and began painting full-time. Her materials are influenced by the new tools that she learned to use rebuilding her flooded home, as well as materials amassed from debris piles. Her work gives new life and beauty to things others have discarded. This particular series of paintings pays tribute to the music, history, magic, and indomitable spirit of New Orleans, even in the face of devastation, tragedy, and loss. Karen, if you want to wave hi and let everyone know who you are. Great. And then our next panelist is Fahamu Pecou. He received his BFA at the Atlanta College of Art in 1997 and a PhD from Emory University in 2018. Dr. Pecou exhibits his art worldwide in addition to lectures and speaking engagements at colleges and universities. As an educator, he has developed Advantage Point, a narrative-based arts curriculum focused on Black male youth. Pecou's work is featured in noted private and public national and international collections. He lives and works in Decatur, Georgia, and was recently named the inaugural artist in residence for the Atlanta Beltline. Through paintings, drawings, and performance-based work, Pecou works to complicate various images and representations that inform perceptions of Black male masculinity. By engaging various stereotypes and misconceptions about Black men, both those imposed and those assumed, he attempts a critical intervention concerning the collective understandings of Black identity. Through staged photo shoots and performances, Pecou embodies stereotypes about Black males as a way of exploring and subverting them. Subsequently, he engages these stylized images in dramatic paintings and drawings, often incorporating various expressions of the African diaspora, which includes the visual iconography of the Yoruba spirituality, the somatic attitudes of hip-hop bravado, and philosophy of negritude movement. In mining the Black experience across time and place, Pecou can dynamically engage themes within his works to provide meaningful engagement and insights across all walks of life. Fahamu, if you want to wave hi to everyone and introduce yourself. We'll be hearing from Fahamu during our talk today. And finally, I'm pleased to introduce Bill Stieper. Bill has documented blues culture in Mississippi for the last 20 years, chronicling the state's blues musicians, juke joints, churches, river baptisms, hoodoo practitioners, traditional farming methods, and other significant traditions. He is a native of Centerville, Tennessee, and now resides in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and has been pursuing the use of 19th century collodion wet plate photography since 2005. While there is a certain patience required for the difficult fieldwork and long exposures in tintypes, he has found that the process brings out in the subjects a deeper essence, cloaked in the visual artifice of an earlier time. These tintypes and ambrotypes speak to themes that make the South unique, namely a connection to history, family, and the land. Bill was a staff photojournalist for the Tennessean in Nashville from 1989 to 2004, winning dozens of regional and national awards. In addition to his photography, he makes music with the Jake Leg Stompers, the Hoodoo Men, the Jericho Roadshow, and the Worried Minds. Bill, if you want to wave hi and introduce yourself to everyone. And that is our panel. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you can see everyone here. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to dig into this work. I feel like it's been such a treat to get to know all of the state fellowship winners and to really kind of see how your work represents both the unique location that you're based in and kind of such a wide range of approaches to making art, from ancient photography to ancient painting to very contemporary painting. So I'm really happy to dig in. So next I'm going to ask a handful of kind of targeted questions to certain participants, and then we'll kind of dig into a group discussion. So the first question that I have is for Bill and Kristi. Both of your practices use techniques for art making from hundreds of years ago. In Bill's case, this is using 19th century photo technique, and in Kristi's, it's using the medieval illuminated manuscripts. I was wondering if you could each talk a bit about why you feel these techniques are still relevant today and how you discovered them. Bill, if you want to kick it off.
Okay, sure. I'll try to keep it brief. I originally kind of went to it in an effort to slow down. I mean, I started out heavily influenced by street photography, Gary Winogrand, Eugene Richards, all those guys, and wanted to engage. I'm primarily a documentary photographer. That's my thing. A photojournalism background. There is a certain kind of integrity of content that I kind of hold myself to, that it has to speak to truth. So when I started out, faster was better, capturing, fleeting moments that reveal a larger truth. because that was my aesthetic. When I first saw some of the photographs from the 19th century, I came up in a post 60s, 70s aesthetic of, you have to absolutely have no manipulation of the scene. You're just an observer and all this stuff. And those photographs were all posed, so they weren't real photographs. But over the years, I've come to, realize, of course, is that there is no such thing as a complete one-sided objective truth. So in the process of continuing along, I went from 35 millimeter to 2.25, which slowed me down even further, made it more contemplative, more engaged with the subject. And then I wanted to take it even further. I wanted to take, the only thing that's slower than what I do would be painting or drawing. So this is the absolute slowest thing that you could possibly do. But what I found is that since there is no real objective truth in photography, no one truth, the slowness, the engagement, the slowing down of time on both on my part and the part of the sitter kind of reveals a certain kind of truth through the slowness of the process, through the deliberateness of it, that is it's completely an antithesis to what I originally thought. It's the thing is that in the artifice of it actually is in some ways more honest, because when you have an iPhone photo that looks exactly like reality, you think that is the reality and there is no other version of it. Whereas, through this process, things are transformed, and the visuals of it, that there's been a transformation. So there's a kind of an honesty to it, to the documentation, which I find really intriguing. And I've been exploring what that means, how deeper truths can be revealed through the slowness. There's no such thing as a snapshot. I can't do a surreptitious photograph of somebody that captures anything. There have to be full engagement on the part of the subject matter. So it's more of a collaborative experience. So anyway, that's been part of my long evolution.
Thank you. Kristi, do you want to elaborate on your process? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Okay. I was a little kid. I saw, like, in Life magazine, these images of, medieval and Renaissance work. And I think I was intrigued with that, just the narrative aspect of the manuscripts and altarpieces, and they had the predella underneath. So it's, the life of Jesus and then all of the different things that he did. And then the more I started to, I started out as a painter and a printmaker, and I was using oil, moved to gouache for a while, and then just going to museums and looking at these images, all these historic paintings. I just love the gold and the just the way the egg tempera layers, and it's a very slow process, and printmaking's a slow process. So I think there's something for me too about the process. And also, when I first started, I was using the egg tempera. I was using family photos and kind of setting up my own, based on medieval and Renaissance imagery, but putting my family in them and bringing in some text. And then in 2016, right after the election, and I had been looking at all of these illuminated manuscripts and, about the kings and all the royalty of Europe. It just all struck me how much things don't change. And and I started bringing in, using the exact images and bringing in faces of the players. So, and then I also took a class at one point where we studied medieval, and it was kind of a combination. I just sat in on this class, a combination studio and egg tempera class. that's kind of how it all evolved.
Thank you. My next question kicks over to Karen and Fahamu. In a similar vein, I think both of you are using what could be described as maybe the most traditional way of making art, which is oil painting. I think it's, you know, kind of been just ubiquitous through history. It's really kind of what most of the great quote unquote masterworks of history, of art history, have been made from. And I guess I'm wondering, you know, in both of your cases, you're really taking that traditional medium and turning it on its head, whether it's through subject matter or through kind of assemblage or other kind of process aspects of the process. And I was wondering if you could each kind of describe what it is about that tradition of oil painting or painting that you would like to kind of update, and how you're doing so in your work. Karen, maybe you could kick it off for us.
I guess, what was the last part of the question? I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your process and kind of the ways that you're building on this really traditional form of painting and kind of changing it for your own purposes.
Well, I think that I think one of the things that has really been pivotal for me, as you mentioned earlier, was Hurricane Katrina. And, you know, we couldn't stand seeing things being discarded, I mean, from our own home and others' homes, and just started collecting stuff and picking stuff up and saving materials. And, you know, so I think that has greatly influenced this use of found and reclaimed materials for me. That was something that I had not really done prior to that. And, you know, in the past, so I mean, really, it wasn't until after Hurricane Katrina that I actually began showing my work. I, you know, had a career as a graphic designer when I moved here and to New Orleans. And, but I also had a little, I was also volunteering at Jazz Fest. And so that has influenced, of course, the music and the culture and the community that is, you know, integral part of Jazz Fest that I got to know, also had influenced, you know, the subject matter that I was began painting. You know, and I still continue to paint people I love and family members and friends, but also people who've touched my life in different ways, through music or through stories or their story, you know, as I have gotten to know or understand things. And I feel like somehow the combination of these, you know, nostalgic, you know, so I mean, the paintings I submitted for South Arts, you know, were of people who were deceased and who were beloved, and some of them, for example, and some that I had met. And so somehow, you know, wanting to pay reverence to them and create, I think, you know, I'm certainly influenced by religious art and artifacts as well as folk art. And so that has also, I think, played a part in, you know, and I'm always trying to come up with new ways to do things, or what new materials can I use. So certainly since Katrina, I have tried to take that to another level and explore the relationship between the images I'm painting and how can I tell a story or evoke a feeling using various materials, I guess.
Hello. Thank you for having me to both South Arts and Burnaway. And I guess I should begin with a bit of a clarification. I'm actually not working oils. I work in acrylics. And that's partly due to, you know, kind of the opposite of Bill, where he's trying to slow down. I have to work quickly. And the thing with oils is, you know, I don't have the patience for working with oil. But my painting process is one that is also very much inclusive of other disciplines and other mediums. So my, you know, even probably more than a painter, I consider myself a performance artist. The painting being the final stage of that performance. So what begins for me with photography, I do stylized photo shoots. to create my source images, and then ultimately move my way into making the paintings. But I think the paintings are an important aspect of my practice and of my thinking, particularly as it relates to my subject matter. You know, given that historically representations of Black bodies in painting is something that we haven't really seen a whole lot of when you look at the canon of art history. And maybe perhaps even more specifically than that, the rendering of certain types of Black bodies in those spaces or through this medium. You know, I'm very much aware of and very deliberate about the painting the subjects that I or the concepts that I'm working with as a means of adding value, of declaring the value of these bodies in a way that they have historically been denied.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for the clarification. I think I just assumed oil painting because they're so smooth, but I'm obviously not a painting expert. That's so interesting. I guess the other thing that I think really struck me about all four of your guys' work compared to perhaps, you know, the other state fellowship recipients and other artists kind of included in South Arts granting program was this bent towards the figurative and of really kind of connecting with the human figure as a subject rather than, you know, abstraction or landscape or kind of other modes or other kind of subject matters or approaches. And I was wondering if you could each talk a little bit about what draws you to wanting to make work that is figurative, to make portraiture, to connect with humans and to represent humans through your work. And how maybe the last year has kind of changed that, especially as sort of closeness and being with others has really not been as available to us. Kristi, maybe you could kick it off for us.
Well, when I was older, when I went back to school, went to college in my early 30s. So, you know, I didn't have a whole lot of drawing experience. And at the time, there were not very many painting models or drawing. It was pretty much abstract expressionist was what was, you know, promoted. And, you know, I was just doing a lot of still life painting, but I just always wanted to do figurative work. So I started using dolls to begin with. And so I had just collected all kinds of dolls, baby dolls, all kinds of things. And then when I moved into painting my family, I mean, it was very important to me. My parents had already passed away, and I don't live near any of my other family, but I had all of the books of photos that my dad had taken, tons of photos, and all the photos from my mother's family. And so I just started, you know, using all of those, scanning them in and, you know, working from those photos. And it's very important for me to have them look like the people, you know, that they are. And then as it moved into these political works, that was even more important to have them look who they were, like, you know, so they would be recognizable. So I think I've answered the question.
Yeah.
And I get all of those images from online, from, you know, for these recent paintings, searching.
Bill, how about you?
Well, in a way, this is obviously the easiest question for me because I'm primarily, you know, documentarian. I mean, I do cultural, social, documentary work, and everything that I do, you know, has a strong human element because mostly what I do is portraiture. But even the works that I'm inspired to do that don't depict people are, you know, they're kind of marked by an absence of people. So crumbling structures, you know, evidence of things, of people's lives lived that are no longer there, that are sometimes more haunting portraits. Like just this week, I don't know if you can tell where I am right now. I'm actually at the Delta Blues Museum in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Behind me, this is the student classroom. This is where, this is the spot where basically the culture is being kept alive by local African-American musicians come in and teach young kids, pass on the traditions on the stage right behind me. And that's, you know, to me, that's paramount to what I do, which is to celebrate, preserve, amplify, you know, parts of Southern culture that I think are extremely valuable, need to be championed and preserved. I mean, it's not, so there's always a strong human element, you know, no matter what the medium that I use. And you know, it's really, you know, kind of I mean, that's my life's work. That's my mission. And it's, you know, even though it's really funny, I'm the Tennessee winter and I'm known for a lot of my work in Mississippi. But I, you know, I do similar things when I'm in Tennessee. I mean, with traditional music, with my own family, I've done work in the Sea Islands. And so it is more of I see myself as, you know, chronicler of the entire South, but my heart is very much in the Delta. So that's where where the bulk of the things I'm known for, but it's all about the human story.
Thank you. Fahamu, how about you?
I think I'll call it obsession with the figure probably started, you know, from a very, very early age. You know, I grew up wanting to be a cartoonist. And so I've always been drawn to faces, you know, whether it was human faces or animal faces. Like, you know, my drawings and cartoons, you know, from an early age were always centered on, you know, centered on like telling stories about people or you know, personifying animals in some kind of way. You know, as I moved into painting, and especially as I began to develop my my voice and my conceptual ideas as an artist, that focus really became more about affirmation, and really trying to create a space that allows for not just other people to see us. And when I say us, I mean Black people, but for us to see us, and to feel affirmed in that seeing. You know, so again, you know, to the earlier point I was making, my figures are not about trying to reimagine or re-image the Black body to make it palatable for someone else, but more so to reflect us in our most authentic selves in a way that, again, becomes an affirmation for people when they see my images, that they can see themselves in it.
Thank you. And Karen?
You know, I've been trying to think about the answer to this question. I don't know how I really got to people, but I also have, you know, from very young years, have drawn faces and tried to capture emotions. And I think, you know, hopefully I capture something where I feel like, you know, I'm maybe not the best painter in the world, and I continue to try to become a better painter because I really hadn't had any portraiture classes. But you know, but there's something I think more important to capture in something, that when I'm with a viewer, there is this common denominator that where we are celebrating a history or a subject, their music or contributions, and their important, you know, the importance of their contributions in our city and in our community, that unites us. And through music, we are united. And so why am I doing figurative work? I'm not honestly 100% sure. But I do know that somehow it's all relational, and maybe some parts of it are unspoken and spiritual. And you know, why don't I paint abstract art and with music notes or, you know, flowing colors? It's just not something I'm drawn to. And I think that a lot of it has to do with trying to capture that human emotion in a face. Hopefully when something moves me, there's something in my use of materials and paint that conveys that to others. And that is something that we all, everyone who's human can share. We all share emotions and loss and grief and joy. And so hopefully my work conveys some of that.
I think it does. Great. I guess one of the other things that I've been really drawn to or kind of thinking about and considering all of your work is, I think in some cases it's really clear that you have sort of a secondary practice or interest that influences your visual art, whether it's blues or jazz or education or politics. And I was wondering if you could each kind of share some of the things about your life outside of the studio that inform kind of what you're taking into the studio and what feeds you as an artist beyond just, looking at other art. Bill, do you want to kick it off for us?
Yeah, sure. That question is also a fairly easy one for me. I don't have to think about it very much because the answer is music. Everything is about music. My whole life is centered around an internal soundtrack. So I was drawn to both music and to photography and art almost equally. But to me, there's not it's just a continuum. It's an analog continuum between the two. So when I'm out and I'm photographing and I'm in a rhythm with the world, that's one of the things that really is the most addictive about the process of photography as opposed to the other arts. I've always been kind of paralyzed by the blank page, by limitless possibilities. I feel empowered by certain limitations, and photography is like the ultimate limitation. It is, you have two choices ultimately, no matter what you're doing. You have a frame that you're putting the subject in, and then you have the moment when you basically choose the moment you want to depict. Sometimes that's an instantaneous thing, or in my case, it's a slow deliberative process. But that, engaging, I like those limitations. But within that, anytime I'm photographing, I'm thinking of it in terms of music, even if it's not directly related. And it's easy when I'm, doing an actual musician. I want to make a photograph. The goal is to do the visual equivalent of what the music sounds like through either emotion, through composition, through various visual ways. I want the viewer to have at least a sense of what the sounds are like that are coming through with the visuals. So those connections are always there. And even when I'm doing music, the music that when I'm drawing inside myself to create music, it's always from a visual point of view. So in other words, it's storytelling. It's when you're singing something or you're telling a story through song, I primarily do it through a visual medium. So to me, that there's a flow in between the two, and only separated by the output. But it all comes from the same source, which is music.
Fahamu, how about you? I'm thinking specifically education and activism and other kind of organizing you've done in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, I can probably go in 73 different directions with a response to this question. I'm, I think it's pretty obvious to a lot of people that I'm greatly influenced by like hip hop music and hip hop culture in my work. But also, I think at the core of my at the core of my practice, at the core of my thinking, is this question around identity, and that colors everything that I do. And as I unravel these questions around identity, it's ultimately led me to explore this question of to explore the question of who are we outside of the impositions that racism and white supremacy and all these other things have imposed on Black subjectivity, right? And so that's kind of led me into researching and investigating and studying like African philosophy and African spiritual cosmologies, and really trying to understand like who we were before, you know, colonialism and all these other kinds of things occurred. Like, what did we talk about? What did we do? Like, who were we? What were we? And those kinds of things really, really like fascinate me. Like, that keeps me up at night, you know, trying to understand that kind of stuff, and really how that connects to like who we are beneath the surface of things. So I'm really fascinated by stuff like that. But you know, in terms of like the activism and scholarship, like I don't necessarily see those things as separate from my practice. Like I feel like my work has always been very research based and research focused, even before I realized that that's what I was doing. You know, like before I started any paintings, you know, I would find myself like poring over books, you know, just to find inspiration. And so I see my art as an extension of those considerations, those questions.
Thank you. Karen, how about you? We talked a little bit about jazz. I'm curious to hear more.
Well, yeah, talking about Jazz Fest, I mean, certainly my work has become very influenced by the culture and the music of this city, you know, which, you know, in this city, I think not in the last year, but, you know, with music in the streets and it just being an integral part of life here in New Orleans, you know, certainly that influences my work. And certainly when I'm working, I am constantly listening to music. And often, you know, if it is a musician that I'm painting, it would certainly be that person's music or something in that genre. I love gospel music and spiritual music, you know, blues and just about every kind of music. But also, I think that, you know, in my spare time, what I am most interested in is history, biography. And so, again, it like comes back to people and their stories and, you know, the stories that of people that have been before us. And so that has resulted in me creating paintings of people who are not musicians necessarily, but, you know, have a story to tell. And so, in genealogy. And so I'm just constantly fascinated with people's stories and wanting to learn about people and hopefully sharing those stories. I feel like through my work, it has been an opportunity to have conversations with people. For example, at Jazz Fest, if I'm in my booth and I have created a painting, you know, it gives me an opportunity to have those conversations about issues that are still issues today, including racism or, you know, I think the painting I had done of Hamid Ardwan, I was just so, you know, he had a heartbreaking and tragic story that moved me, and I wanted to do a tribute to him. And so, you know, I hope I always have that painting around so that it will continue to foster communication and conversations with people about the problems we are continuing to have today.
Thank you. Kristi, I think for you, obviously there's a kind of political and historical inspiration to your work, but I'm curious if there's other sort of insights that you're bringing into your practice and other kind of influences.
I would say that initially my influences were primarily about women's work, you know, and sort of gender issues. You know, I'd had 2 kids, I was married, I had, you know, so there was, you know, came out of a family where home was very important. So to my mother, we moved a lot and it was always a big deal about home. You know, just lots of women in the family, lots of influences around that. Sewing, you know, costume making, which I've done, and dressed, you know, in like 40s costumes for my mother and put myself in doll houses. And I've done some stop motion animation. And, you know, I just find that there's never enough time in the day to do all the things I would really like to do. and thought just escaped me. Something I was going to say.
I definitely relate to that sense of never enough time in the day.
Yeah. I mean, and I had intended to do more around that issue. Here it is. When Trump was running and was getting elected, all the women's issues sort of coalesced around that. And I think that's where the real political, interest came in. And that's when I started becoming a lot more active locally in politics, attending, Democratic meetings, protesting, doing some activist things. Yeah. And so, that's been kind of full circle there.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to ask one more question. I see that we're already getting some audience questions in the Q&A, which is great. If you guys have any others that come to mind, please start throwing them in the Q&A. I guess kind of to round out our group discussion, so the South Arts State Fellowships are designed to kind of have, one artist per state. And I was wondering if you could each speak to sort of the artistic communities that you feel are really unique to where you're based, and what's kind of special about the specific city or state or area where you've set up shop, and how that has influenced your work. Fahamu, maybe do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I feel like Bill now. This one's an easy one for me. Being in Atlanta has greatly impacted not just who I am as an artist, but who I am as a human being in this world. I came to Atlanta in 1993 at 18 years old. I knew I wanted to be an artist, but I didn't really know what that meant, But around the time I was about to graduate from the Atlanta College of Arts, so this is like the late 90s, I started hanging out at a venue called Yin Yang Cafe, which was a small little kind of hole in the wall club at the end of 3rd Street. And in that space was like, young Black musicians and poets and writers and dancers and visual artists, you name it, everybody was there. And it was like this, I called it, the Renaissance. Like it was like the Harlem Renaissance, and that's really where I first saw the potential and the possibility of becoming an artist, and also the responsibility as an artist to like make work that means something and could be impactful in the world. And that has always stayed with me. That's, I left Atlanta shortly after graduating and moved to New York thinking like, I gotta be in New York if I wanna be an artist. But nothing in New York I found compared to what I experienced here in Atlanta. And it just brought me right back. And I've been here ever since. But I say Atlanta is a major influence on me creatively. Not just not just only because of the community, but also because of what I call the Black visibility here. Being able to see Black people at all walks of life, engaged in all aspects of the city, is something again that is affirming. It's like seeing yourself, right? And that has inspired me greatly. To make the type of work that I make. The community here is very, very supportive, and it's like a big family. It feels very much like yin yang. It's just expanded all over the city now, and I love this city for what it has been to and for me.
Thank you, Bill. How about you?
My sense of the artistic community in which I'm, participating and a part of is a pretty wide-ranging kind of community. It really kind of runs from the town I live in Murfreesboro, mostly centered in Nashville, taking in Memphis, and all the way through the whole state of Mississippi as well, because I have so many connections all up and down that entire way. And what's so great about, let's say, Nashville specifically, it's always been a strange and unique place, even within the South, as a center of commerce, center of of the commodification of culture. You know, that's both a good and bad thing. You know, but because of that, there's always been a strong support for the arts. Now, that conflict has always been there between the kind of landed gentry idea of the arts through the Vanderbilt University and the symphony. There's always been strong support for support of the Western culture versus the art of the people through the Grand Ole Opry, through various things, and that conflict has come to bear in the past. But mostly, what that means is that there's pretty strong support for the arts all the way up and down, from the folk arts all the way up to the fine arts. And it's you can find your community, you can find your tribe within that, and there's so much cross-pollination between music and visual arts and dance. I mean, we basically have all of that there. It's a much in some ways smaller than what's happening in, say, in Atlanta. But until fairly recently, we were a well-kept secret, and now, unfortunately, the secret is out, and we're fastest growing area. But within that, there are a lot of opportunities. I would say that for photography specifically, it's still kind of in its infancy. There's been some really strong support for photography from some galleries. Mostly, it's been through painting and more fine arts. But man, the community there is so vast and so supportive. I mean, especially amongst the artists themselves. It'd be hard for me to imagine living anywhere else. Like Fahamu said, I go to New York, once every year to 18 months to get kind of culture vulture, absorb it all. But I'm pretty happy where I am. That's dance with them what brung you.
I love that. Thank you. And I agree wholeheartedly. Karen, you talked a lot about New Orleans, but I was wondering if there was anything else that you kind of wanted to expand on with regards to kind of the artistic community there.
Well, I can only speak for myself. I think there are many facets of artistic community in New Orleans, but again, I think that, beginning with the Jazz and Heritage Festival, where you're bringing together every kind of creative person that you can imagine, from Indians and drummers and dancers and musicians to craftsmen and quilt makers. And so I just feel like I'm very blessed to have had this experience and be part of this community where, and jewelers and just sculptors, where we have all gotten to know each other and support one another and be supported by these organizations here in New Orleans, including the foundation, that really helps to support the community. And so I feel lucky to have, to be a part of that. That's all.
And Kristi?
Well, Charleston's known for this, the arts festival, Spoleto, when it comes in the spring, and there's a wide variety, diverse artists throughout the community now. And I used to know most of them, and I don't anymore. There's so many young people coming here from out of the college, Charleston, but also from other places settling here. I don't see myself much. The last few years for me have been kind of focusing on the home, because I had an ill husband who passed away a year ago. So that kind of kept me from being out and about a whole lot and participating. So, but since my work sort of focused around the home, and I'm kind of introverted, it's fine with me. I just, Charleston's a very seductive environment. It's beautiful, and a lot of the painters here that get a lot of attention are landscape painters, and that seems to be what sells in the galleries in town. And but there's a big music scene, and you know, I mean, all of that is growing, and we have Redux Art Center and the College of Charleston, the Halsey Gallery, so, and you know, the Gibbs. So I try to go other places to look at work, and I can't wait to get back to New York or Atlanta or wherever.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you guys all for, I think, what has been like a very illuminating, interesting sort of glimpse into your worlds. Before we wrap up for the day, and I'm sorry if you hear a whimpering dog, I did want to kick it over to the audience Q&A, and we have Burnaway's program assistant, Emily Yamazales, online, who is going to read our audience questions for us. Emily, if you kind of want to tee them up.
Hi, so I'm just going to read off the question that we have from Christopher in the chat. It is addressed to the group as a whole, so whoever wants to jump on this first, feel free. The question is, there's tremendous diversity in the South in terms of visual arts. Were you aware of one another's work before this group exhibition? And please tell us a little about your overall experience with being in South Arts and the grant process.
I'll jump in here. I was, well, I've heard of Kristi's name and seen a couple of her paintings um, prior to the group show because of work that I've done in Charleston. And but I wasn't familiar with everyone else. I think well, I was also familiar with Cheryl Rowland's work. But it was a really great experience working with South Arts. You know, I think the program, the fellowship that they provide is a really rich one, especially given the way that the South is sort of uh, uh, not necessarily considered when we think about some of the like larger art markets. You know, to have an organization like South Arts that is doing this kind of work to champion artists, you know, working in the South, I think is really important and really powerful, and really, again, affirming. I keep using that word for some reason, but it works. But yeah, I think it was a really great experience, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to meet everybody and to get introduced to their work, and yeah, and I mean, I think being able to see the diversity and the talent and the, you know, just really ingenious ways that people are thinking and expressing themselves is just something that's just always enriching and inspiring.
Well, I'll mostly echo. Oh, did you want to start, Kristi?
It's fine. I'll wait.
I'll mostly echo what Fahamu said about that. The process, you know, it's really funny. I'll first say that it's not surprising that I didn't know anybody's work, but I certainly do now, and I'm a huge fan of everybody's. And I was pretty humbled by just the diversity and depth of all the all the artists that were the winners. And you know, my hat's off to the committees that do the selection process to have such an incredible amount of diversity of medium and approach that shows that, you know, the South, you know, it's not just kind of a regional stereotype. I mean, some of us work in a little more traditional ways, but I mean, you have, you know, with some of the technological work that was highlighted last time. I mean, it's just it just shows that the South is way more complex and diverse than you know, people would. It's not just all you know, William Faulkner and whatever from the past. What was the other part of the question? I was trying to remember that. Oh, about everybody, how many folks that you know. And yeah, I just really have deeply enjoyed exploring everybody else's work. And I really hope that I can meet some of the other artists at some point, you know, once we get through all this pandemic Zoom meetings, that we can all maybe meet together someday. Because I really would love to ask some questions and see some of the work in person. So anyway, still congratulations to everybody else, and I'm deeply humbled to be a part of this group. I was really shocked when I got the call, because you know, somebody told me about it 2 weeks before the deadline, and I hurried and focused and got everything in. And when I got that call, I was absolutely blown away. So still kind of glowing from that a year later.
I was familiar with Fahamu's work. You showed at the Halsey Gallery, yeah, and but not of the others so much. But I don't know how many people actually got to go to the exhibition in Georgia and Columbus, and so I got to go and see everybody's and just the whole layout of it. I mean, it was really just a fabulous exhibition. I thought it just worked together the way it was hung, and it was really nice. And I had 2 friends with me, and they just couldn't say enough about it. It's just been such an honor to have gotten it. You know, I was totally shocked when I got the call also. And, you know, it's a great way to, you know, finally get work out of my little world. We haven't shown other places. So I don't know if that's the whole question. Was that it? It was up on my screen and then it disappeared. So.
Yeah, Karen, do you want to add?
Sure. So in terms of the question, was I aware of any of my fellows prior to this? Well, Bill Stieber's work I have been familiar with, and I know there were a lot of folks in New Orleans who were very excited when you got the fellowship, and I'm honored to be included with the artists, all the artists that have the fellows. You know, I was pretty surprised that I was selected for Louisiana. And while I wasn't aware of Kristi or Fahamu's work, I absolutely love both of, I've really enjoyed exploring their work and looking at it now. And, you know, I aspire to paint maybe one day as well as y'all. I don't know.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are running out of time. We had some questions about the exhibition that was on view at the Bo Bartlett Center in Columbus, Georgia. And the folks from South Arts have some amazing resources on their website. So although the exhibition is closed, you can still learn much more about the artists that we featured today, as in addition to the other Southern Prize winners and state fellowship recipients on the South Arts website. Ivan, if you'd like to put any links in the chat to all the attendees where they can learn more information. I did want to just say thank you to all of the panelists for joining us today, and for all of our attendees. I think this has been just such a pleasure to get to know you all and to connect, especially in these times of not really being able to connect as much as we normally would. So if anyone has anything they want to share before signing off, I think we can call it a wrap. And I really appreciate everyone for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. It was really a lot of fun. I really enjoyed hearing everybody else's answers.
Yeah, it was great. Okay. Bye.